Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to another edition of Know Your Unit 1 Vision, aka Know Your Fried Chicken. So, look, we can safely look at the absolute multitude of classes, whether new or old, in 1 Vision, and safely come to the conclusion that really, there is no class that's absolutely perfect at everything. Well, unless it's a Valkyrie slash Spellblade. This thing is perfect at everything, so let me go ahead and cover this for you. Obviously, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Yes, I see your dramatic comment, guy. Don't worry, they didn't ruin your game. Now, let's go ahead and cover this guy real quick. So what is the deal with the Spellblade slash Valkyrie slash I always call him a fencer anyway? Well, basically, they're a class that is the ultimate jack of all trades, as they always have been, but they basically are just kind of a malleable, perfect solution to almost anything that you can run into, whether you need offense, whether you need defense, whether you need buffs, whether you need AoEs, whether you need range support, whether you need item support, whether you need healing, buffs, debuffs, what have you. They've got it all covered to some degree. Again, this isn't to say that they have absolute access to everything, but they have a very interesting kind of charcuterie dish of different options available to them. So let's go ahead and cover this. So right off the bat, one of the unique features of this class, well, semi-unique. There's a few classes that are able to do this, but they're one of the few that are able to throw items innately. So this means that if you've ever heard the meme of, oh, just have Valkyries fix it with items, that's oftentimes because people will just use, for example, heavy armor Valkyries just kind of spam throwing items at people. Any buff or debuff that you need is basically right there in your item pile. Any healing that you need is right there in your item pile, and they're not exactly getting dislodged anywhere on account of their good equipment. Which actually gets us to our next interesting detail about these guys. We'll actually go ahead and go back into my regular party menu for this, which is the fact that their equipment options are fantastic. So, they're able to equip all, well, not all, but like 2/3 of heavy armor options. So, for example, heavy plate armor, heavy leg armor, they have full access to, but additionally can swap that out for lighter weight options, like, let's say, if you wanted to run Phantom Cloak on them, if you wanted to run medium armors on them. They have access to basically everything except for robes, which they don't even need. They have access to pretty much all arm and leg guard options, as well as basically everyone gets access to all the helmets except for the wizard helmets. So either way, really fantastic stuff there. So whether you need to spec them for defense, whether you need to spec them for something a bit more aggressive, you've got all of those options available to you. And this basically gives them a ton of flexibility for whatever role you need. For example, right here, I wanted to specifically build a Valkyrie that wanted to, let's say, have guaranteed charms on hit, and additionally wanted to be an absolute menace with lightning blitzes. And so what I did was I went for a Ring of Alacrity to give her more avoidance to offset her heavy armor. Her heavy armor gives her insane amounts of bulk. We went for a Flame and Void to give her that extra 10 intelligence to hit really hard with AoE spells. And then a Caldia with one of their built-in abilities to have a guaranteed charm on hit, as well as a chance to counter charm on hit, as well as also boosting the attack of her spells at the same time. And again, this is still an effective frontline fighter, so weird stuff like this is basically the kinds of stuff that I was constantly celebrating in Reborn, and it's something that the Valkyrie's also been doing over here in 1 Vision for absolutely ages. They can get away with all sorts of dorky builds, and it's fantastic. So, as far as weapon access goes, they've got access to all dagger types, including the Caldia and Katetsu for whatever those will do for you. Whether you needed a sleep or charm dagger, I personally love the combination of the Caldia with the Valk here. Personally, one of my favorites, just because it mixes so perfectly. It helps them land their debuffs. It helps them do great with their offensive spells. Additionally, daggers are extremely lightweight. It goes and mixes really. The finishers of the dagger go really well with the class. And additionally, the fact that they can guarantee, they can offer guaranteed hits as an action skill means that you can always guarantee that charm. So it's great stuff there. But up until then, even something like a Binding Dagger is really, really solid in their hands. They've got access to swords, obviously, and bear in mind, if any of these are grayed out, this doesn't necessarily mean they can't use it. For the sake of context, since not everyone's used to reading how this works, if this thing over here is red, that means they can't use it. If it is a number, that means they can. So, in this case, they would have access to all sword types, whether you wanted to go heavier with the Bastard Swords, whether you wanted to go long range with the Rapier, Whether you want to go highly accurate with a basic sword, all those options are available to you. For spears, same thing. They have access to all varieties, whether you wanted mind spears for better debuffs, as well as a hobble, whether you wanted long-range pikes, whether you wanted short-range halberds to deal with medium armor enemies a bit better, whether you wanted highly evasive short-range spears. All of those options are, again, just nice and in your corner there. If you wanted to run anti-undead maces, if you wanted to run standard hammers, all of those are available to you. So that's going to be your stun option. That's going to be your anti-undead option for your katanas. Whether you wanted to have the lucky TP removing option for your basic 1HKs. Whether you wanted to have a bit more mind and avoidance for your fencing katanas here. Again, all of those are in hand right here. If you wanted to be able to use something like the Goddess Bound to have the ability to fly, then you can go ahead and have that on there too. That they get the heavy katana here as well. Really great avoidance on this thing too. Not to mention, it's surprisingly easy to get. I don't see this used as often as you'd think it would be. Like, yeah, their level requirement is a Chapter 4 one for sure, but really good weapon. Anyway, they get access to the two-handed varieties if you wanted to, for example, do the same old lucky TP removal thing, or if you wanted to use the draw-out circle there. Again, very lightweight swords compared to other heavier hitting options, which makes them really solid in the hands of a class like this that can take advantage of so many skills at once. If you wanted to go more spellcasty with them and run staves, if you wanted to, let's say, switch out for, let's say, a more offensive variant, or defensive rather variant, and be able to parry a bit better, maybe avoid a little bit better. You can get access to those amazing finishers while also still getting an additional bonus to your spellcasting and such. So, you may be getting the general idea here that, yeah, these guys, they're really freaking stacked. In fact, the only thing that they lost from the official versions was their switch archer setup, so they can't use, for example, instills plus short bows, but then again, everybody can freaking do that now, so it's not exactly anything they needed. Now, as far as ranged attacks go, just like the Vartan, and I can't believe I missed this when I was covering the Vartan, they're one of these classes that's really good at building up to a Coup De Gras. So, skill-wise, let's go ahead and cover what they've got access to. So, obviously, they've got access to all the different magic types, as they typically do, as well as all of the weapons that we already covered, their augments, their racial abilities are fairly open, obviously still no anatomy in their case. We got our parry, deflect, and overpower, as you do. We get our counters, our bashes, our clarities, efficacies, jumps, herons, which Heron, on top of their innate ability to walk through water, basically leaves them free to just walk around water normally, so it's good stuff there. Full access to Field Alchemy, so they get up to Field Alch 2 by the time you get to 20, really good stuff there. Why do I not have that on her? We need to fix that problem right away. And TP up if you need it, attack 2 if you need it, as well as damage reflection. But let's go ahead and talk about their action skills, because this is really where the fun starts. So, Fated Circle. You get this one right at the very beginning of the game, and apparently I'm dropping things, fantastic. But yeah, Fated Circle is one of the most useful skills in the game, no questions asked. This is effectively the old Vigorous attack ability. However, it is in a targeted, smaller AoE, so basically you're firing it out in a bubble. Okay, sorry, dropped my phone there, I'm not sure how, but whatever. Let's go ahead and figure this out. So yeah, basically this means that you can guarantee any debuff on any weapon, and additionally guarantee any attack. And with how hard it can potentially be to hit targets when it's, for example, raining, or when you're on bad footing, or if they're attacking from the water, this means that they plus debuff weapons are an absolute match made in heaven. So we're talking about a case that they can basically ambush something from the water and guaranteed charm them right there on the spot. They are very hard to stop, and in fact, something like Overpower is oftentimes a good choice on your Valks and Spellblades, because it's the one thing they can stop them at that point. So, being able to overpower a parry is potentially very useful. Okay, next we've got HP and MP Infusion. You'll notice there's no Conserve MP because they don't friggin' need it this time. Anyway, HP Infusion will transfer whatever's in your TP bar, as long as it's above 50, to your HP, but additionally, it'll also give you a small heal on top of that. So it's basically a basic heal plus whatever your TP bar is, and more often than not, it'll give you a half to full heal. Right there's an action move. It takes a decent bit of recovery time to use. It's basically an emergency full heal whenever you need it, but it's a really solid move there. Basically, this is one of those things that makes AI Spellblades really hard to kill, because if you haven't killed them off completely, nothing can stop an action move once their turn has started outside of a lack of TP. So basically, something like a katana or something is the only thing that can potentially damage that bar. Outside of a few skills, so let's say something like a Lament of the Dead, something like a Katana there, something like a few of the kind of more oddly specific spells and such. But either way, getting this to not happen is a bit more difficult at any given moment than may potentially seem. But yeah, this tends to give them insane survivability. Something like MP Infusion, if you're running the more expensive spells, will be nice and oppressive for you. You know, things like summons and such. We got our instills, as you'd kind of expect, opportunist for escaping things like rampant auras. We've got our usual wards here, absorb MP, which I personally would prefer over conserve MP MP infusion any day of the week, just because, you know, you basically steal it from the other guy instead. So it's a nice little offensive component to it too, but either way, you do you. And then they can go ahead and talk to fairies too, because of course they can. Something this preposterously evil, of course, needs to talk to something else so preposterously evil. Now, this basically translates to a class that is more or less a presence in every situation that they run into. So, for example, right here, I ended up switching this one to daggers partway through the game after realizing just how much faster they were. And so, for example, she's always parrying, she's always going and typically outspeeding stuff on kind of those daggers. Something like that first dagger finisher is all she's gotten so far, but it allows for draining all MP from a target and bringing it over to her instead. So, either way, great synergy there. Again, Caldia is classed as a dagger this time around because, you know, it's basically a knife and a fan. Why was it a hammer? Anyway, so yeah, it's really really cool to have that there. I've been using her as a semi-long range recruiter because, again, she's always in the front. Heavy armor gives her a good bit of bulk. HP infusion basically allows for emergency heals, so she can very comfortably sit in the front and hold entire places on her own without too much of an issue. Tack 1 in order to be able to, you know, pretty much spam recruit whenever. Steadfast to avoid being moved backwards. Augment because, of course. Fated Circle because how are you living without it? And then, you know, counter hit 2 here. Really, just like the vanilla PSP situation here, they are amazing at so many things that really it's just your choice over which things you want to spec into. Like, you'll notice that despite all of this stuff, I hadn't even bought Field Alchemy 2 on her, despite that being one of their better features, just because they had so many other cool things going on. So, either way, great class there. As far as their spell access goes, they're going to have access to missiles. They're going to have access to some basic buffs and debuffs, typically on the lower end there, as well as their sort of bread and butter, which is going to be the explosive spells. So, for example, with lightning here, they would get access to all of the shock lance abilities. They wouldn't get access to the AoEs, but they would have access to blitz, and things like these essentially take the place of those AoEs. They're going to be close range. They're going to be pretty heavy damage there. And typically are going to be combining really well with their armor. That effectively they're more or less a magical shotgun. So yeah, the big decent AOE around them, really heavily punishing and stuff like that. And all of these different elements all come with different buffs that they'll want to bring along as well. So like Galvanize here will bring along some True Strike, potentially very useful, but Electrify would, for example, double a target's TP, meaning that if you have somebody like, let's say, a dragon that's just managed to hit 100, you go and use Electrify on them, suddenly that Disembowel is one-shotting bosses. So good stuff for them there. Let's say something like Earth there, we have access to Tremor, of course, but also we have Bulwark and Razorback. So, like, let's say they go and put Razorback on in those situations where they know that they're going to sit in the front line and they're going to take some hits. Suddenly, they're reflecting a ton of damage back. You combine it with the Reflect Damage skill, and then you just go heal out of it with HP Infusion and set it all up again. At that point, they're basically just an evil cactus. And then, let's say you wanted to fly. You've got Hover Draft over here on Wind, as well as Grace for dodging things, as well as as well as the usual assortment of missiles and such like that. On the water side of things, we've got Haze for avoiding arrows, Purify for healing, giving them basically the equivalent of the old Divine Heal back from Vanilla there. But in this case, it's also getting rid of poison as well because Purify is actually good this time. We've got Enrage and Soul Spark available if you wanted even more guaranteed hits. Soul Spark is basically Mighty Strike. That's available to anybody, so whatever you wanted to Mighty Strike, you've got there instead of just a warrior. Could potentially be useful depending on the unit that you're seeing there, like if they're, let's say, buffing a knight, or buffing something like a rogue to, let's say, go and hit a target to go make sure that they're bound to the ground or whatnot. Lots of interesting utility for that spell there. Over on the ice side of things, we got a Resilience, but we also got Winter Siege, which gives you Battering Ram without needing to use any skills for it. And you can still run the classic kind of setup here as far as Define goes. However, instead of heals, they get stuff like Bravery as well as Haste, allowing for improving speed and getting rid of debuffs. So Dispel is basically the old Ease 2, but way the hell cheaper. So you've got that there as well. And then if you wanted to run Dark, you've got the old Shadowfax, of course, but you've got Charge and Lancet, which allows you to charge a target's MP and TP by however much you use, and Lancet, which allows you to go heal somebody from your own health bar. So it just allows you to kind of share your bars with others, which is a cool little switcheroo to the usual. So either way, really open class there. I believe they still get summons at this point too. All right, let's see what Captain Elrig can learn over here. Let's see. So, do they actually still get access to summons? Let's see. They do still get their hover drafts, their sky pillars. I assume they still get access to summons. Yeah, so they get access to tier 1 summons. So I should mention that as far as summons go, they actually work a decent bit different in One Vision, where effectively, instead of being implied to be single target spells, they are directly just single target spells. That they're a single target magical machine gun. So effectively, they're going to burst fire one unit instead of scatter firing around an area, and oftentimes it is going to be exactly the effect that you were going for in the kind of official versions, just kind of happening right then and there. This means that they'll typically have less projectiles, but those projectiles will typically do more, meaning that you'll typically see more consistent results out of these things. So yeah, Self-Hide is going to be the ultimate missile, as you'd expect from the usual thing here, but you don't have to have an open area, you can just fire directly at that thing. So that is going to be the final spell that they have access to. So, anyways, so that's kind of about that. That's how these things go. These guys are really, really legit. Really good units in every situation. They're actually one of the few that can make decent use of the totem shields. So for those that never tried these are basically shields that can be improving luck, MP, intelligence, to improve things like your parry odds, as well as your casting casting efficiency and stuff like that, as well as potentially allowing for a guaranteed weaken on hit if you use them as a weapon. Very interesting shields that like just switching your shield entirely for an offensive thing is a risky play for a lot of classes. Like, normally you'd probably play it a little bit safer, maybe go for a damage reflection shield, maybe an avoidance shield, maybe a spell reflection shield here. But in the case of something like the Valkyrie, because they're able to run very heavy equipment, this means that they can very safely run stuff like this without too much of an issue, meaning that it gives them more of the kind of armor to be able to kind of achieve offense, as it were. And additionally, as far as other options go, bear in mind that pretty much anything that's considered a light shield is available to them. So if you wanted to, for example, run heavy armor plus something like a main gauche, congratulations, you basically have an invincible dodge tank. Again, main gauche is basically instant dodge build on whatever you put it on. That they're sacrificing defense for 50 avoidance, which basically bottoms out hit odds nearly no matter what. You know, potentially tricky to use, but on something with heavy armor and the ability to use HP infusion, that is that's going to be pretty much one of the best tanking options you can build. I mean, obviously they're going to still get hit by guaranteed stuff, so probably want to put in something like a helmet for resisting some spells in that particular setup. But still, potentially a very solid kind of unkillable brick there. Something like the Gorgon shield is also a really solid thing there on account of being able to be immune to stun, or not stun, but stone. Being able to petrify, being able to use an evil eye, stuff like that. Either way, lots of great options on these guys. You can probably see why they're one of my favorites in every version. Like, these guys are just insanely good. So that's about that. That's how the Valkyrie changed. They're item specialist, kind of low-key spell specialist, great to tank. They know how to bring the right equipment for survival. They know how to bring the right equipment to bring the right debuffs to the table. And yeah, pretty much whatever your fight happens to be, they're gonna have some use there. So yeah, that's the Valkyrie and Spellblade in a nutshell. Just as always, the everything specialist. Okay, so y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.